So let's move on to topic 2, closely related to topic 1. Google I.O. overnight, seemingly in response to ChatGPT and OpenAI, but really more, I'd say OpenAI was trying to front run the Google announcements. They have announced a whole bunch of AI stuff, as you'd expect. They're announcing AI search, or really AI overviews in search, a US general availability happening any second now, with the rest of the world coming soon. They talked about Project Astra, which is continuous video observation and caching. We predicted this actually, Yaniv, on a couple episodes ago, this idea that it'll be able to say like, hey, where are my glasses? And Project Astra saw the glasses, 30, 40 seconds ago in this video. And it said, oh, the glasses are next to the red apple. And so being able to cache at live video and tell you what's happened. They showed glasses, the glasses form factor. At least I've been hot and heavy on the idea of glasses being the form factor for AI. They showed incredible video generator, Gemini Live with interruptions, which caught up instantly with OpenAI's ChatGPT-4o. They showed AI at the core of Android with Circle to Search, Gemini as your new assistant. So there we go. Yaniv, we also predicted Gemini taking over Google Assistant.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
On-device responsiveness. Yeah, I mean, these are all relatively obvious if you're paying attention. And then finally, as a really fun little joke at the end, they said, someone's going to count how many times we mentioned AI today, and they got Gemini to count the number of times they said AI, and it was 120. And then Sundar said AI again on stage, and it flipped to 121, which I thought was a cute little button at the end, getting Gemini to do that. So yeah, they really quickly caught up to a lot of what 4o was presenting and deeply embedded it across their entire suite. What do we make of this, guys?
Obviously, the very first thing that you mentioned, AI search and US general availability with that is going to be massive. I think everyone has been wondering, when is this going to happen? I think that there's been a period of time where people have been flipping between using ChatGPT searching or using Gemini searching, using Perplexity searching, going over to Google, comparing it to the search results you're getting in the traditional Google search, saying, is this accurate? And am I seeing everything I need to see? And I think that now we are finally seeing those come together in a really, really valuable space. I think that that's one of the most applicable and easiest ways in for also the AI curious, AI less literate, perhaps. And I think that that's a really, really valuable announcement. I think that it really also speaks to something that we discussed earlier, which is just that the right UI for the right task, understanding how these different user experiences, whether it's text-based or visual or voice, are now becoming real modalities for interaction in a way that they haven't before, which allows us to ask the question, what is the right mode for any given interaction or any given task that you're trying to do? I think Project Astra is going to put me out of a job with my partner, because up until now, I've been the one that says your glasses are on the table back there. So I thought that's pretty funny.
Going to lead to divorce all over the world. That plus your AI girlfriend, like... what else do you need?
Oh, no. What are we going to do? I think that also people are going to have a ton of privacy concerns with that and going to feel very, very, very reticent to actually implement it and use it in their home. I think that that's a really interesting question. And then in terms of wearables and glasses, I think that, to me, we can get into what is the right wearable and how are you actually interacting with this thing. I think that that's a pretty interesting conversation. I personally am not of the same opinion as you, Chris, and I do not think glasses is the form factor there. And so we can get into that potentially in another discussion, but it is interesting to start to see them thinking about what the wearable form factor is.
Oh, good. We'll have to duke that out today. This will be fun, because I wanted to talk about the glasses a little bit more, yeah.
It's fascinating how much this mirrors the ChatGPT thing. And of course, this is not Google responding. Like, these things take months to prepare, especially at a place like Google. So maybe ChatGPT front runs it, or maybe this is just one of those things where in a highly competitive space and you've got smart people, you get a certain convergence as you learn from the market. But it's fascinating in both cases. What you can see is that the battleground is moving from the quality of the models. It's not that they're not improving the models and it's not important, but that's no longer the headline. It is now about distribution and related to distribution interfaces. It's like, okay, we've got these things that are incredibly capable. How do we actually get people using them and make them useful, which are sort of two related things. And that's why we have like ChatGPT making it free, right? Like, going back to that conversation, it makes no sense when you are fighting for distribution to make your most capable model paywalled. So they're not going to do that anymore, right? And Google, of course, they're putting Gemini into search, into the assistant. And you know what? Like, this was not the main reason, but I'm about to move from iPhone back to Android. And that's partly because I think, okay, that Google ecosystem is drawing me back in and it's becoming more compelling, not less, right? I want all of this Google goodness baked into my phone. And so it's like, oh, okay, we've got this very futuristic thing. And it kind of like, to me, it's hard nearly to hold these two thoughts in my head at once. Like, on the one hand, the singularity is approaching. On the other hand, this very old school game of distribution and pricing and user experience and everything old is new again, right? Like the AI space is not different from any other space that's ever been there. And that's just what's happening here. Like Google is now flexing its distribution power, the fact that it already has billions of people interacting with it multiple times a day, every day. It's like, okay, now let's take our pretty good AI model and put it into there in a way that is actually useful, right? Like the first iteration of AI distribution, I've kind of dissed it already in previous episodes, is like, hey, let's just stick AI into everything. Like I pick on Notion AI, I'm not quite sure why, because everyone did the same thing, but it's like, okay, we've got a product and then let's just add some AI in it. You can talk to the AI and the AI will unreliably answer your questions about this document, or it'll like write some crap that's not useful. And, it was one of those things where it very quickly transpired that once the novelty wears off, these are not useful tools. So I think now we're at the second generation. It's like, okay, we've got good models. We've actually had time to like take a minute, breathe, and think about how do we create a useful interface? How do we actually make this AI more than a crazy novelty and more something that actually helps people? And I'm optimistic that we've kind of reached that point, which is exciting.
Yeah, I think we've nailed it on this show, which is this idea of moving from the model layer and competing on these benchmarks to the product and distribution layer. I think that is the story of this season, of the week. Let's say the seasons are changing every week. And the Gemini stuff is gorgeous, like just gorgeous. There is these like animations and just beautiful layouts, and it's pixel perfect. It's really delicious. And it's deeply embedded. It's across all of the suite of Google and Android. And the thing that I'm most excited about, and I've touched on this in previous episodes, is deeply embedding Gemini into Assistant and therefore making Gemini ubiquitous, throughout your home, throughout your car, throughout your mobile device, and on your, I was going to say Chromebook, but on your desktop devices and productivity apps. The other thing that, and we should debate this, Elli, but like I'm very bullish on Astra as this kind of continuous video processing combined with glasses. If we are to believe that the best AI agent or assistant has context, and context relies on video, and video relies on a heads-up camera that can see the world literally through your eyes, or at least cameras and assistants and Nest cams or whatever that can see your environment through third-party perspective, I think glasses become very, very compelling, and we should debate that. The last thing I want to just summarize quickly is I think what was interesting also was equally what's missing from the Google announcement. I did not see in the supercut that I quickly watched this morning much personality. The 4o announcement was filled with personality. Like that thing was laughing and giggling and flirting and talking at every response. And it was being sarcastic and, engaging and all this kind of stuff. And it's yet to be seen if that matters. As you said, Yaniv, maybe that's just cringy. And at Uber, we would look over at Lyft, and Lyft would do these cute pink mustaches, and they would fist bump you as you got into the car. And it turned out nobody gave a shit about that, and they thought that was awkward. And what they wanted was the fastest price in ETA. Best price, fastest ETA. And so is it a game of utility or is it a game of personality? And then the second thing that Google is missing, I think, that's interesting, we'll see how this plays out, is that while OpenAI is seen as in Microsoft's pocket, I think they've shown that they're not with the Apple devices and the Apple Mac first desktop app. And so while Microsoft does Microsoft things for Microsoft operating systems and Google does Google things for Google productivity apps and Google's Android, Apple obviously does their Apple thing. I wonder if OpenAI isn't the speedboat that gets to be cross-platform, ecosystem agnostic, connect all your third-party data sources, and will help you no matter which device, which ecosystem you're stuck in.
Absolutely. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall in the internal negotiations, arguing for using Apple devices on stage and the reason why. And I think that is absolutely accurate, and they want to at least give the impression that they are not in Microsoft's pocket, that they have agency and they can be cross-platform between the different majors. And I think that is absolutely at least part of their intent, if there was not another intent, as we discussed earlier, around potentially some kind of Apple partnership. I think that this question of utility versus personality is so incredibly interesting. I think that this is a form factor that is so completely different than anything we've seen before. And I think that so many people, because it is, at least as you said, the first sort of iteration that became so widely used and adopted was chat. The form factor begets personality. Everyone is asking for and wanting this thing to feel more as you said, reducing latency, more conversational, more interactive, more human. And I think this also begets major issues and asking the question of how are we also launching education resources to really equip a population with an understanding of how models work? All of us here on this podcast and other tech podcasts are deeply embedded in how these models work. We understand what is happening more or less in the back end when a model is going and scraping data and surfacing these results. But the broader population doesn't. And when you start imbuing personality, this is when we start to get into quite a dystopian and challenging space, particularly when it comes to kids. Having said that, I'm also definitely a tech optimist, and I believe that this new modality presents a real opportunity for solving major societal issues that we're having today around the loneliness epidemic, access to things like therapy and conversational support when people need it, more ubiquitous and readily available, and removing the barriers to entry to those things. So I think that while personality is incredibly important in this interface and in this interaction, I think it also needs to be paired with education into how these models work. And I don't know if you've interacted with any of the existing sort of voice or therapy type models out there that are really interesting to me. These companion models, the guys on Hard Fork podcast did a deep dive into it last week.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And yeah, it really was amazing. But it really, what they're doing currently right now is like every increment of time, the model is reminding you, this is a model, this is not a human. And obviously that is not the right way to do this. But asking ourselves what is the right way is important. I think that there is a role for personality to play. I think this is more than just a utility.